Welcome to the Finspo Show. I'm happy to have this chat today with Urja Mehta, who's a sports psychology professional. She's done a master's in Loughborough University, and I actually took this chance to put in a lot of my personal performance and psychology questions. So, y'all might have to deal with that. I think those will be actually very helpful for you as well. So tune in and find out what they are. And alongside with that, we'll talk about her experience with NGOs and her studies in the UK to find out about the differences between working and studying in the UK as compared to India in the sports psychology industry or the sport industry. Hi Urja, how's it going? Welcome to the show. Welcome to Finspo. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's great being here, and I'm honored that you've chosen me as one of your many guests to
Yes.
speak.
Yes.
So yeah.
Today, I'm like, my whole topic is basically around India with the world. We're trying to figure out how we are doing in terms of sport, in terms of business. Today, it's obviously you're a sports psychologist, so we're going to explore topics around sports psychology and your experience in India and in the UK,
Yeah.
where you studied at Loughborough. You when you were at Loughborough, Loughborough, how did it pronounce?
It's actually pronounced Loughborough.
Loughborough. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very different from what the spelling is.
Yeah.
So that's why I usually tell people Loughborough, because that's just easier to explain, like the
Okay.
spelling wise. But yeah, it's actually Loughborough.
Loughborough. And of course, I'm going to make mistakes in pronunciation throughout.
Yeah.
But Loughborough and Leeds, they are basically the two best Olympic athlete training facilities. How was your experience there? And also, what do you think is a substitute for that kind of an experience here if you would have studied sports psychology?
So to be very honest, when it comes to the facilities, and obviously Loughborough is really great when it comes to the world class facilities that it gives and provides to all of the elite athletes, whether it be the athletes from the UK or from outside the UK as well. Funny story actually, when I was studying there, this was Jan 23, I actually met Neeraj Chopra
No way.
because he was training on our campus, and it was amazing. He was staying at our so they have a separate hotel for the elite athletes where they provide you a personal chef, like a coach, SNC, all of that. And I saw him train, and I had a conversation with him as well about sports psychology. I asked him, so this was obviously before the Paris Olympics, and at that time he was preparing for the Paris Olympics, and I spoke to him about how, have you ever spoken to a sports psychologist, or have you had any mental conditioning or training before? And he's partnered with JSW, right? So he was
Yeah.
talking about how he has spoken to a sports psychologist, but it's not regular, right? It's
Okay.
like just once in a while. And he's like, yeah, before the Paris Olympics, I will speak to a sports psychologist again. So I think just that one thing was like, I was like, maybe athletes should realize and recognize the importance of having regular mental training,
Okay.
and not just around when the competition is going to be, So it's not like if there's an exam on set date, you'll only study 10 days before, right? Usually people say you should study in advance and regularly sort of revise
Yeah.
the work. So it's pretty simple when it comes to conditioning, especially mental conditioning for
I
big
think
tournaments.
with that thing, you also, like when you were working here in India,
Yeah.
you mentioned that people here are not really listening to the advice that you give them because, and what I had told you at that time was that they're really having problems that are outside of the sport.
Yeah.
So the sport is an escape for them. So how do you think, like, will people in India be able to kind of make time for this? Make time for regular sports psychology work like mental training.
So honestly, it's changing now.
Okay.
There are people who are starting to take it seriously, because just the other day I took on a footballer individual, and he was just talking about how he can't open up to anyone else in his life, say for example friends or family, even though he is close to them. He just doesn't feel like he can talk about certain things with his family, which is why he reached out for professional help. So I think people are slowly starting to understand the importance of speaking to a third person, say for example, a sports psychologist in this case, also to get like a professional opinion, because all the advice and the
Unbiased.
opinion, yeah, that you get from friends and family is always going to be a little biased, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that. But coming back to the whole, you spoke about the facilities. I think in India, I don't think I've really seen that level of facilities anywhere except maybe the Sports Authority of India centers that are all
Really?
over. Yeah, so it's obviously not as state of the art as say the UK, but
I mean, there is Inspire Institute, and then Reliance
yeah,
is doing,
yeah,
and Tata.
exactly.
So it's only the corporates here that
Yeah.
are kind of lifting the threshold.
Yeah,
But not really, like that access is not a lot given to a lot of players.
exactly.
So that's where they struggle. But
Yeah.
you right now who are visiting a lot of like I always wanted to visit, like I wanted to do a tour around India to figure out
Yeah.
the condition and how we from a privileged background can help a lot in like other regional places. So
Yeah.
you kind of did a tour of I think 3 or 4 places. Uh, which places were these and how was your experience?
So I went to Jabalpur. I think that was the only real village that I visited, like an NGO. The other places were, I went to Patna, but that was wrestling academy. It was BSSA, the Bihar Sports State Authority. They had a wrestling academy over there, so I went there as well. And the others were the Sports Authority of India centers. There's one in Bangalore, and I did a workshop with an NGO in Delhi as well. So I think the only NGO where I went to and I was like, okay, this is a place that needs better facilities was the one in Jabalpur, where so it was 2 hours away from the airport. So it was a proper village, very little facilities. So they predominantly played football there,
Yeah.
and the ground was very uneven. Even the goalposts were just the
No way.
post, no net.
Yeah.
No markings on the ground. So just no floodlights, obviously, because it's a village at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I thought the facilities were not too great. And there were only 7 coaches, so I was trying to obviously make them understand the importance of, what is sports psychology, why is it important to recognize why mental health is important in sport for their athletes. So they did understand, but again, it's like a little in and out, right?
Yeah.
Even when they're trying to pay attention, they're going to kind of zone out because it's not necessarily something that they even know about that much.
Yeah, I mean they have problems that are completely unrelated to sport.
Yeah.
So like what do you think, like did you find someone that you had like a direct, did you get through to someone, like get through in the sense you were able to make a difference for someone? Do you have like a example where you felt like you got through someone and actually it impacted them in their life?
Yeah, I mean, are you talking specifically
So there's 2
about?
types of sports psychology. One is like high performance and like to win,
Yeah.
like win tournaments, win
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
or from the lower ebb, like the NGO work that you also did. So that's when lifting them to like actually being able to compete and like so in those 2 types, like this one, did you can mention an example for any of the 2?
So there was a coach in the Jabalpur NGO that I was at, where he was very interested in knowing, and he had kind of read up about sports psychology, because obviously everything nowadays is available on the internet, right? Like you can search anything and you can get the information about it. So he already knew a bit about sports psychology, about why mental training is important, and I think he was really he really understood the importance of sports psychology and why speaking to the children in a certain way, especially because all the children at that NGO were below the age of 18.
Yeah.
So they were all like children.
Yeah.
And it's so important to start at that early age, I feel, because if you're going to introduce these new things post the age of like closer to when they're turning 18, it's going to be harder to sort of model them and make them understand. But I think earlier on, when they're maybe like 12, 13,
Yeah.
and they can still be made to understand what these things are, it's easier for them to grasp it also and not retaliate.
Do you like, for a very important distinction, we need to kind of figure out what is the difference between sports psychology and clinical psychology, if you can like explain it in a bit of a short method.
So, clinical psychology is very different to sports psychology because sports psychologists only work with athletes and teams and coaches, while clinical psychologists can work with anybody.
Yeah.
They can work with athletes as well, but usually what sports psychologists do is, if, say, for example, an athlete is going through anxiety or depression, if it gets to a point where it's an extreme case, then the sports psychologist usually refers the client to a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
So that's how it works.
So sports psychology is more performance based
Yeah.
to get an outcome, and clinical psychologist will overall
just-
health well-being.
yeah.
Health well-being is the main focus.
Yeah.
So what did you think was the norm in the UK when you spent time there? How were the sports psychologists you looked up to? How were they placed in organizations like big football clubs, since you're into football?
Yeah.
How were they placed, and what was their role like? Who came up to them, and like what was their core role?
So in the UK, this field is very well recognized. A lot of people are already pursuing this field. A lot of people are in training for this field. So in the UK, you have to do a separate licensing and certification after your masters to become a licensed sports psychologist, because
Okay.
they obviously take it very seriously, because it's under their HCPC, which is their health and care protection. Not very sure about the full form,
Yeah.
but it's HCPC, where you, because you're interacting and the well-being of another person is in your hands, they obviously make you do a whole licensing and certification, which is mandatory. You can't call yourself a sports psychologist without that.
Yeah.
Until you finish that, you have to call yourself a sports psychologist in training.
Really? I mean, even with
Yeah.
a master's degree, you can't.
Yeah. So you basically have to work under supervision, under a licensed sports psychologist, and then you have to complete certain hours in the field where you get to work with all these clubs and leagues and small academies, even small schools, small clubs, and get that work X.
Yeah. I mean, you're aiming to work in football, right?
I mean, that would be great. I mean,
Yeah.
I really don't mind working in any sport. I mean, I've played football all my life, which is why it would be easier to, connect to a football player. But I'm open to honestly working in any sport, because I feel like I have played so many sports growing up that I just love knowing, different athletes' experiences and just to make an athlete a better performer, to reach that high performance.
In high performance, so I'll just put an example in front of you right now.
Yeah.
There's been an athlete who's gone through an injury, okay, and he's in a 50-50 challenge. He's coming to you with a question that I just want to go into that 50-50 challenge, like without thinking about my family, without thinking about my injury, without all these kind of fears holding me back. How would you tell them to just draw the line and go for it?
So the 50-50 is him being
50-50 challenge is there's a ball and two players are going at the same time for it. There's a higher chance of impact. And that's when the PTSD of an injury hits.
Yeah.
So what do you think, at that time, how can you guide that athlete to just switch and be his beast self again and not worry?
So I think a lot comes into this, right? Especially, so I've had the ACL myself.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for me to connect with athletes who come to me with injuries, because I very quickly give my examples, so they instantly feel comfortable because they know what I've gone through as well, which is similar to what they've gone through. So instantly the whole empathetic side comes out, where they know that, okay, she knows what I've gone through. And it's very important to understand which level or which state of their rehab they are at,
Okay.
how many months it's been.
They're great. It's like 10-12 months are done, they're fit to play.
Okay.
But just the mental barrier.
Yeah. So So if they are fit to play, if they've cleared all their rehab checks, I think to make the player sort of understand to get over that PTSD, I think to really be in the moment when they are playing. I think a lot of meditation comes to help with that. A lot of self-talk comes to help with that. A lot of so many athletes, like you said, have the irrational fear of getting injured again, right?
Yeah.
Like the fear of, because it can happen, right? Like
100%.
sometimes it's not irrational.
Yeah.
So to sort of explain that whole concept to them. So in sports psychology and in psychology in general, we have this type of therapy called rational emotive behavioral therapy, where we try to make the player understand between the rational and the irrational thoughts that they're having.
Yeah.
So to sort of show that distinction before they get onto the field would really help as well. And yeah, being extra prepared by doing a good warm up, speaking to the sports psychologist a day before your match or an important
As you
event.
said, regularly in touch.
Exactly, regularly in touch. There are some athletes who feel comfortable talking to a sports psychologist even a day before their match because they just want that
To like just
extra
be primed,
boost or extra motivation.
be primed for the game.
Yeah.
So that's what I was also thinking. It's like there, I've spoken to in another podcast. I was speaking about the preparations, and I've also myself gone through a preparations during a week for a Saturday night game or Saturday evening game.
Yeah.
How do you prime an athlete to the mentality priming to the final day? Is there a weekly thing? Since you say that that's a regular
Yeah.
standard procedure that goes into it. If you're at a football club, how you get that mental priming to that peak?
So it's very different when you're with a club, because with a club you're working with all the players at one go, right, as a team. But when it's individual athletes, it's very different, especially because when you're working with a football team like I did, you do group sessions with them before matches. So what I used to do working with the team was before matches, especially important matches, we would sit as a group, we would do certain team building exercises. I would also make them talk, because talking is very important, especially communication between team members is very important. I would make them one by one individually go around and speak about what they thought happened well in the previous match and what they thought didn't go well in the previous match. So this helped them each understand everyone's different point of view. Obviously certain points overlapped, but eventually it made them understand what was the common ground and what needs to be worked on for the next match. So that gave them a really good boost and understanding, and also motivation, because I think when you talk to all your team members openly, there's also that understanding that, it's not only me who's thinking this, it's also my teammate, right?
And it's a very common thing I've noticed in
Yeah.
India, that people don't really talk. Like it's referred to as a weakness or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my opinion.
No, that's definitely there. So yeah, that's what you would do if it was a team, right? Like a group session.
Okay.
But individually, it really depends on the athlete whether they want to take sessions per week, like one session a week or one session a month.
Okay. 3. Well, let's make it 3 because you said regular. So
3
like
in a week.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay.
To get ready for Saturday.
So I would probably say it's unnecessary to have it so often.
by regular you mean like just regular touch-ups or regular check-ins?
Regular check-ins, exactly.
Yeah.
Because if for a Saturday match I'm going to talk to you 3 times,
Not needed.
it's just going to be the same thing again and again, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to talk once. Like I can talk to you if you want, like a day before the match to motivate you, or at the start of the week to tell you what you can do individually on your own, like say for example self-talk or motivation or meditation in preparation for your Saturday's match, right?
Okay.
And it's not going to change. You just have to do the same thing over and over, because practice does make perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's this one controversial thing that I always keep thinking of, which is I have seen a lot of athletes using I talk to everyone about this. I see a lot of athletes use their childhood traumas, childhood PTSD and that rage built up to perform well at their sport. And once they kind of go to heal mentally or in whichever way possible, they kind of lose that edge. So, what have you explored this area of thing with an athlete, like where you see someone who's like having a troubled personal life, but that's really converting well into like their professional life. So, how do you guide someone like that?
I mean, when it comes to off-field problems, right, like family problems or personal problems, I think it can go both ways, right? It can
Yes.
even fuel your performance, or it can clutter your mind so much that you're not going to perform well on the field. And that's when I feel like talking to a professional is very important, because only they can give you a third person point of view which is unbiased, which is not your family, which is not your friends, which is someone who can try understanding what you're going through. And I think personally, I haven't really encountered someone yet who has gone through this sort of issue or problem. But I think talking about it is the first step, and understanding whether are they being brought down by it, or is it fueling their performance. And sometimes it could even be something that a previous coach from school time or something has told them, that has something that, oh, you'll never be able to play this position, or something like that. It can be something like that. Or even some parents are not supportive, right? Like, not everyone is going to have parents who are supportive and who are going to support you till the end, because many parents, rightfully so, have the thing that, are you going to take up the sport professionally? How are you going to fund yourself? What about a job security, financial security? All of those questions come in as well. And this is not only in India, it's even in the UK, right? Or wherever, US, Australia, whichever country you want to take. At the end of the day, you need to be able to financially support yourself, which everybody wants, not even the parent, even the athlete, right? At the end of the day. So I think understanding what is bothering the athlete, what is the trauma that is making them feel a certain way, because certain times only when you really probe a topic over time will they reveal more information. Sometimes they won't open up to you, obviously in the first few sessions. You need to build that rapport, and then that also comes with the responsibility of you creating that safe space as a sports psychologist.
Did you feel that people in the UK were opening up more and people in India were more restricted while your sessions?
So in the UK, I didn't do any sessions with UK athletes, because, like I said, you have to complete the licensing to speak to the athletes there. But with my experience in India, I think if you create that space, right, for your athletes, like I said, if you make them feel safe, if you make them understand that, I have been an athlete once as well, I know what you're going through, understanding where they're coming from, making them feel heard. Because I think at the end of the day, everyone wants to be heard, right? Everyone wants their problems or their issues to be understood, solved, worked on. And I think that's the most important thing as a sports psychologist that you can do, to really create that space for an athlete to then share more with you, so you can help them in return. So that's what even I tell my athletes, that the more you tell me, the more I'll be able to help you, right? So yeah.
I mean, that's kind of good enough. I mean, it wraps up the whole subject. But what my main ending point is that in the next 5 years, like 5 to 10 years, I mean, you're going for your PhD as well. So congratulations for that. And what changes do you see happening here in India, since the corporates are pushing it? And what changes do you see happening in the UK? How do you look at it in the future, in like 5 to 10 years?
So hopefully, in India, the industry, especially for sports psychologists, so it does sort of boom in the next 5 to 10 years, because like the Paris Olympics just went by, and I mean, unfortunately, we didn't perform as well as we thought we would. I mean, obviously the athletes gave it their all, and the coaches gave it their all. The whole contingent, in fact, I think, did a great job. But at the end of the day, people are going to remember your medals, right?
Exactly.
Unfortunately, however much you want to praise the process and praise the game and the athlete and their talent, it all comes down to the final, the
result.
medal tally, right? The result, because that's what people are going to remember. And hopefully, the 2036 Olympics are held in India.
In India, I mean, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And hopefully, I think slowly athletes are understanding the importance of mental training. And now, as a sports psychologist myself, I do see more job openings for
Okay.
sports psychologists. I see more people hiring sports psychologists, like, job openings
Yeah.
wanted like a sports psychologist. So people are wanting to hire a sports psychologist. It's
And
becoming a need.
mainly want to work on their own self.
Yeah. So it's becoming a need even for organizations to hire a sports psychologist to understand the importance of hiring one. So I think that's definitely coming up already. So in the next 5 years, I think hopefully every academy, every sports organization has a sports psychologist, at least one, if not more. But yeah, I think the next 5-10 years.
I mean, let's hope that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for like the growth of Indian sport, and like I'm even doing this for the growth of Indian sport
Yeah.
in some aspect. So yes, thank you, Urja. I hope you work for the top football clubs in the UK
Yes.
when you go there for your PhD.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can wrap this podcast. Cool.
Krish was just sitting there like.
There's some like touches.
Did we
here.
go like too fast? I thought he was talking too quickly at some aspects.
I was. Because I've had coffee, no? So I'm just like, my brain is running faster than my mouth.
Yeah.